The 6th of July 2018, Oxford and Collins Dictionaries accused with defamation of character under Acts 2013, as well as the law under the Serious Crime Bill under the Psychological Abuse Law, and also the Human Rights Acts under 2010. The black meaning which the Spanish and Portuguese thought up, which began to enter the mainstream around the year 1442, to mock, steal and enslave the Bantu Moors, Bantu Israelites and the Bantu African people, and Oxford and Collins Dictionaries, are still choosing to use, uphold, and are maintaining this use today. Therefore, this illustration is to highlight just how Oxford and Collins Dictionaries are publicly printing explanations of profanities to mock and continue to discriminate the Bantu people. Here is just a small part of this extent, on which their examples is simply psychological abuse, and this abuse is on a huge worldwide scale, and if nothing is done, then this is set to continue under the radar of Oxford and Collins Dictionaries forever. So, after the Greeks had visited over the periods of 1,000 years or so, then about 300 years later, where their previous Greeks ancestors came to Africa as students, their Greek descendants returned as conquerors. These Greeks' descendants destroyed the cities, temples, statues and libraries of the Bantu Egyptians. Then these Greeks began to claim African Bantu Egyptian knowledge as their own. Not only was the African Bantu name and legacy stolen, but this also paved the way for the wholesale and theft of African Bantu people, which was to follow some years later. Then, with the birth of the slave trade, it remained tactically necessary for the Europeans to further dehumanize the African Bantu people and devalue their historical worth as a people in order to ensure their value as slaves in this horrific episode that still continues for the Bantu people. So there you have it, the renamed so-called Negro, now to be known as a race of dead people with a dead history and no hope for resurrection as long as they remained ignorant of their past. This was a triple death. The death of the mind, body, and spirit of the African Bantu people. This was to complete the true trinity of death. It was strictly forbidden for the so-called Negro slaves to learn to read and write. Such knowledge was the key to liberation and was placed firmly out of reach. As the renamed Negroes became educated, however, I sought to redefine myself. The evolution of the dead word Negro had moved from Negro to colored, then back to black, which is the same meaning as Negro because the Spanish word Negro is black. Both understandings of this word mean dead. Therefore, to be of my true African Bantu land's heritage as a person, I must get back to being reunited with my known Bantu original origin name, the name known as the origin of my land ancestors, which is Bantu. As people are connected to their origin of country, as it has been stated, people and place go together. More examples of this are Britain, British, America, Americans, England, English, Scotland, Scottish, Germany, Germans. With this clear truth in full view, accept the acknowledgement that there is no African Bantu lands, countries or continent that is called Black or Negro land. This inducted word was a way to begin fabrication to exploit tyranny, suppression and demoralization of the Bantu nation as a whole, forever. Therefore, this injustice, which is clearly a lie, needs to be rectified immediately. This represents our progression of my self-awareness. As a free, honorable Bantu person, I have a responsibility to educate myself and rediscover my identities, as knowledge of oneself is the key to unlocking the door to a peaceful future. So the word black is a fake deception of terminology brought from across the sea, was from those with an agenda from the year 1442 who were the Spanish and Portuguese, imparting their impedance and placed it upon me, producing a position of low mental stability, which has now today plainly deceived the hearts and minds of billions of people across the world. Not just African Bantus have been deceived, hitting the mainstream since the year of 1442, but the Indians, the Asians, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Australians who are doing the same treacherous treatment to the Aborigines, the Mexicans, the Russians, the Germans, the Americans who allow their people and police force to continually brutalize Bantu origin people, and the British who just seem to follow whatever the Americans seem to do. Still, this clear universal arbitrary wrong, which have been knowingly or unknowingly enforced and unfortunately now continuously believed by all countries and nations, have shown to be deceived.